going right to it. I click live, so we're already rocking and rolling, my friend.
Good.
Absolutely.
It's so nice to see you.
It's so nice to see you too. I missed your face.
I miss your face.
Well, I'm excited to chat with you today. I think we're going to have a few people that we know that are maybe going to jump on. Usually Miss Amy waves.
Yes, I'm waiting for Amy to come on. That would be awesome.
Here's hoping.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so I'm excited to chat with you, Miss Erin. And you know what? I think all this time I've been thinking that your name is different. Your surname is, how do you pronounce your surname?
Poredos.
Poredos. I always thought it was Poredos, but it's Poredos.
No, a lot of people get it wrong. They say Paradas, like when I was younger, I got teased and it was potatoes.
Oh, jeez.
That's how people remembered me. So you know what? I love potatoes. I will, I'll take it. So,
Hilarious. Yeah, I get, believe it, it's funny how there's, people will tease about whatever. And I've had Huggies. Yeah, Hughes is a very common surname, and yet people still get it wrong.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Why do people feel like they need to make fun of people's last names? Like, it's so ridiculous. But anyways, that's a whole other topic.
Yeah, I suppose so. So we do have someone who's joined us. So I'm going to just introduce you, my love, because I know you wear many hats, and one of the hats that you wear is being a self-love and divorce recovery coach, which is so cool. And so we are going to talk. There's Amy.
Hey, Amy.
Just as a little bit of a side note, I just want to tell people how we met, and it was through Miss Amy at her conferences, because you were being the big wig at her conferences.
I've messed up Amy's last name a lot on stage too. So,
Well, Amy already knows this, but I have a cousin who has the same last name, but he pronounces it Ruddle. So it's interesting how the name, someone's name could be pronounced differently depending on who it is. So, yeah.
100%. 100%.
Yeah. So you and I met when you were a conference director, and I remember back then you had talked about starting your own biz, and now that's what you're doing. And so you're helping people ditch their shame, get rid of old scripts and self-limiting beliefs so they can rediscover themselves, discover fierce self-love, and gain the courage to live their life without fear, which is so cool. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and most of us, if not all of us, have been through heartache in one shape, form, regardless whether it's divorce or breakups or even in the business world. I'm just finding that there's a lot of similarities in the business world when it comes to being rejected. So it all matters.
I mean, being rejected is one of those things that it really teaches you a lot about yourself, especially going through something like divorce, where you have this idea of who you are, and then having that idea rejected, and then it's okay, so what am I supposed to do now? Who am I now? And I know that throughout my entire life, I kind of lived in this very self-conscious, people-pleasing lifestyle that, even after my divorce, I was like, who the hell am I? But then realizing, oh God, who the hell have I been? Because I was trying to be everything to everyone else. And, I think working in the conference industry, and I've obviously had a pleasure working with you and obviously Amy, I, have had such an experience being able to help people. And I mean, there's a lot of different ways to help people, but I knew after going in through doing events and being on stage and seeing even the transformation over a couple days in terms of how people shift their thinking about themselves. And it just kind of opened me up to this whole other world that I actually had no idea about. And it was quite amazing. So because I actually, was going through my divorce during the time that I was working as a conference director. And it was really the thing that actually, I think, helped me recover, because I was, I was obviously traveling, but I was obviously helping people and helping people learn and trying to, inspire with what I was doing. And yeah, so it kind of just all snowballed from there. And I think from a very young age, I always knew I wanted to do something more. But I never thought I would be sitting here talking to you saying, oh yeah, I'm a self-love and divorce recovery coach. Like, I would never, if you would have told me like 3 years ago even, I would have been like, you're crazy. So yeah, like I feel very privileged to be doing what I'm doing. And I feel I just want to help people.
Yeah. And I think that self-love is is just with you probably see it a lot with speakers too, because you've been able to see behind the scenes that almost all of us have got this like imposter syndrome of like, oh, that sucked. Like almost every one of us after we get off stage, that sucked. I was horrible. And
you see the like you kind of get feedback and you're just like, like.
Yeah, and focusing on the negative feedback. So I know we really do. I mean, almost every one of us does want to receive feedback. We want to better ourselves. We want to do things different. We want to improve. But yet most of us have a tendency of focusing on that one person who didn't like us, right? So I think there's a lot to it from both a professional and a personal standpoint. So that's how you basically started the Joy Tribe, right? Like that's how you started and chose this career?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely started with doing, the conference directing and working with Amy and all of the amazing speakers. I learned so much from you guys. And just, going through the divorce process myself. Mm-hmm. And to be quite honest, it was really difficult. And there was one night that I woke up in the middle, I think it was 3 a.m. And I had this idea, the joy of it literally just came out of nowhere. And it was like, you need to start the Joy Tribe Co. And so it actually started as mental health events. So where I was bringing people together to talk about their mental health struggles. And it was literally just, people who just wanted to speak. It wasn't necessarily, speakers, but it was just, not to say ordinary, but like normal people coming together, talking about things. And through that, I was really able, like I felt super inspired. And then the pandemic hit, and obviously, stuff happens. So I'm like, you know what, how else can I use my strengths? How else can I use, what I'm doing in another way? And just, I was called to become a coach, and I was called to do, the divorce recovery. And I don't know if people are following me, I am very inspired by Tomb Raider and just this whole idea of becoming like the heroine in your life, because I was literally the damsel in distress for most of it. And I was just tired of living someone else's story. And I wanted to be able to help women find that heroine and find who they are and start loving themselves again. Because a lot of us just go through life and just like, go through the motions, like, I will go to work, I will do this. And it's just, it's like once you go over that edge of like, there's so much more to life than that, it's like incredible. And that's what I want to like share with the world. So as much woo as that sounds woo woo, but it's true.
I don't think it is woo-woo. I think it is, and the pandemic, I think, probably has certainly become a focal point for a lot of us as well, because whenever we go through some kind of adversity, whether it's going through a divorce or job loss or a death in the family, because they're all deaths, quite frankly.
Yeah. Yes.
For us, the 5 stages, is we're all sort of looking at like, is this what life has to offer? Is this the best that life is ever going to get? And and it's hard to go through that loss. It's crushing, regardless of whether someone else has made the decision or you've made the decision yourself.
Yes.
Going through that loss is so hard. But to your point, that Tomb Raider, fierce heroine, like the power pose kind of thing I just find so many people do find that resilience. They do find that when they've been through adversity, that they come out on the other side so much stronger for it. But when you're in it, you don't feel like you're ever going to get out of it.
Yeah. And I mean, and I think that's the thing where I was really struggling, and I obviously didn't have anyone to help, kind of like in my friend group or in my family, like no one was going through divorce, like no one could help me. And I was like, okay, like I don't know how to deal with all this, like first of all, rejection, and then okay, well, what does that mean for me? Like that I identify now as like this this idea of failure, because let's face it, my parents have been together forever, and like my sister is happily married, and and I guess there was like a couple people in my family who have gone through that, but it was just no one I could really, connect to my specific story. And yeah, like it was just not having someone there to guide me through that. I think it would have just made the process, first of all, a whole bunch quicker.
Yeah.
And, to be able to teach me more about like unlocking my strengths and unlocking my potential, and, being able to see the positive out of, that devastating divorce. So, yeah.
Well, that's one thing when I went through my divorce was my mom. My mom's like the best sort of reframer. She's so funny because she'll go, okay, you have a certain amount of time that you get to grieve. And then then with mine was, okay, listen, your life could be a whole lot worse. And then it's sort of like, and then you start to go to, and then I went to anyways, a place of gratitude, of realizing the benefit, what are the things that I have in my life to be grateful for, as opposed to focusing on the negative. So that certainly helped me. And of course, as you know me, Erin, I talk to everybody. So like anybody that would even like look my way, I just was like, listen, let me tell you about my story.
Yeah, and I'm kind of the same way.
Yeah.
But a lot of people are not, and a lot of people internalize their emotion. And that is, that digs deep, and it really gets not only embedded in your mindset, but it's embedded in your body, and you begin to not like take care of yourself, and you get this negative garbage that you put into your head, into your body, and it's just it's hard to get out of that sometimes. So
I think what maybe is it what you do, sort of hold people sort of accountable to a certain extent.
Yeah, so it's basically, you can obviously go through divorce, but there's a lot of time, even with just regular habits, and like being able to, start going to the gym again, or, wanting to go back to school, like all of these things are habits that you need to start doing. And it takes about, I think, 21 days for a habit to, process and get into your system. And I mean, that's almost a month. Yeah. So a lot of people with the busy lives and like going through the motions will just be like, oh, well, that didn't work after like 5 days. Like, I'm done with it. And people who are going through heartache, they're like, I just need to cope. I need, food. I need alcohol. I need, I want to sit in my sorrow forever. And I'm never going to get better. And like the negative cycle happens. So it's harder to get out of that. Mm-hmm. And, get new habits when you don't have anyone there. Because if you're especially going through a pandemic, and I mean, yeah, we're, getting out of it, but, going back out into the world, like, you need to gain those healthy habits and start, socializing again, and, being able to feel confident in yourself. So I truly believe that having someone there to guide you, and I call this the inner adventure, because you literally are going inside in an adventure through your emotions, through your life, through your trauma, and you're having to combat it, and you're having to fight those demons, and you're having to fight those like fire breathing dragons. And, it's to get to the other side that's the hardest. And that's where I come in, is that I'm the one with the map and, helping you get there.
Yeah. Actually, I did have a question from a friend, and I forgot to send this to you ahead of time, but and hopefully you can answer this, which is, how many, have you dealt with a lot of people? Like, does a lot of this negative self-talk come from childhood? Like, is it that those traumas from childhood and so forth that are just sort of resurfacing? again?
I would say majority is from trauma from childhood. And here's the thing is that trauma, like, and I don't want to negate any like horrific trauma, but literally everyone deals with trauma. Literally when you are born, it is a trauma to the body. And whether it's like a small thing that happens and I love you, Amy. Whether it's a small thing that happens to you or it's like a major event, you're still going to be traumatized. Like let's go back to my story. So I didn't necessarily like have a super traumatic event that happened to me, but you know, when I was younger, I didn't feel like I was enough. And there was a, you know, my dad was going to all my sister's baseball games and I was the art kid. So I'm like, well, what are you like? I don't have any art shows for you to go to. Like, what are you gonna like come see? So I internalized that and thought that I wasn't good enough. And there was one moment that I particularly remember that because I was and still kind of terrible at math. Even Amy I will, you know, going through the budgets, I like freaked myself out like every second. Anyways, but there was a moment when I was younger with my dad, and he had come home, you know, after work, and he was like tired. It was a stressful week for him, and the last thing that you want to do is like help your child with a freaking like division question that they have to do. So when he was working with me, he was like short tempered and like just didn't want to like he was trying really hard, but he just like wasn't in it. And at the time, looking back, like being in that moment, it's like, okay, well, I must be real stupid because I'm not getting this. And like, I was not, like the information was just not going. And so looking back and, you know, working, you know, I will say I'm working with a therapist, you know, going back and looking at that situation and saying, okay, well, what actually was happening in that moment? He was stressed out. He was busy. He worked a long day. Like he's coming home and like working on like math problems, which is like the last thing you want to do. So being able to step in the other person's shoes, but also learning. And again, this is maybe, you know, growing up and learning life, but like parents are just trying to do the best that they can do with what they have. And it's not always going to be perfect. It's not going to be perfect, actually. It's, you know, and that's the thing is that we can't, and it's hard to learn this as a young child, but like we can't necessarily blame our parents. Obviously, there are situations, yes, you can blame them, but they are just, you know, they're just trying to do what they can do with what they have. And I think learning that and being able to, you know, unpack that for myself really helped into, you know, understanding my own trauma and why I think the way that I thought. So that was a long whole circle of life there, but
it totally makes sense. And I, you know, one of the things that my mom and I will say sometimes is like, my mom will say, I never woke up any day and said, I can't wait to screw up my kid's life today. Like no parent ever.
No one says that.
Things like, oh, great. Today is the day that I'm really going to devastate them. Because, you know, you're right. Everyone is doing the best that they can with the tools that they've got. And sometimes it is important to get on the other side of the table of like, what were my parents going through at that particular time? And instead of taking, I mean, I've just done with myself is knowing that I can't, like, I have to take ownership of, at some point you got to take ownership of your life and stop blaming other people for what's happened, right? Because the more you can take ownership back, even though like it's more powerful that way. You own it.
Yeah. And that's kind of where I sat after my divorce. Is like, okay, well, clearly going through life, you know, listening to what society thinks is correct, listening to, you know, how you see your parents and how you see everyone else's life, and, you know, having a partner that's like a cookie cutter, like this is what I'm supposed to do, this is what I'm supposed to have, like, you know, this is supposed to happen in relationships. And it's just like having such a skewed view of like, or very boxed view of what life should be like. And, you know, looking back on it, it's like, okay, like, how did that work out for me? You know, how, like, and it's almost like, and I'm sure you can attest to this as well, but looking back, you're like, what the hell was I thinking? Like,
Yeah.
but I mean, hindsight is 2020, but there is where the action needs to happen is like, okay, well, now you're looking back and you assess what's happening and you assess what happened in your relationship. And like, you know, like you said, like, what ownership can I take on this?
Mm-hmm.
Because it, I mean, again, this is not, you know, set in stone things because every relationship is different. Yes, there are some terrible relationships, but there are some things that are red flags or things that you what might have overlooked that you weren't listening to yourself, that you let slide. So therefore you got into this mess altogether. And I mean, you know, on my wedding day, I had, you know, severe anxiety walking down the aisle. And I was looking for garbage pails to puke in and places to run. And I was like, I'm just nervous. Like, it should not have been like that. And I think that we need to like normalize talking about these feelings, and like whether or not you are like walking down the aisle, you can still say no.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
I get that though, because I know that that feeling is like, well, I've made this commitment. I've, you know, whether you're
yeah,
now, whether you're engaged or you're married, and but that was the thing I kept saying over and over again. I've made this commitment.
yes,
You know, and it's never going to be a Disney, and then they lived happily ever after. Like, marriage is hard. It's not for the faint of heart.
yes,
And if you throw kids into the mix and so on and so forth, and it gets even more complicated. And
yeah,
yeah, and the grass sometimes seems greener
yeah,
too. So
yeah,
it seems like, oh, if I only, and this happened to me actually, was I was watching the people in my network, same thing like you, where I was like, oh, like, look at these people, they had these fairy tale lives. And then someone reached out to me and said, oh, you know, behind the scenes, my life isn't what you think it is either. And
yeah,
I was like, oh gosh, yeah, here I was sort of envying other people's lives to think how amazing, if I'd only gone in that direction, how great, how much better my life would have been, when really the facade of what goes on in social media isn't
yes,
the truth. It's not the truth.
yeah,
People put out what they want to put out too. So
yeah.
yeah. And so I think, you know, one of the things that I've learned too is to run your own race. You can't compare your own life to someone else's life too. I mean, I think
Yeah, I think that's very important to say. Like, even like within your like LinkedIn and branding and all of that, and looking at other people's companies, like, what does that do for us?
right.
If we are all like, we all have something unique. We all have something unique to provide the world. So comparing yourself to others, and I mean, I do this as well. I'm a real person, but like, trying to compare yourself to someone else's journey is like oranges to
Yeah.
mushrooms. Like, I don't know. Like, it's just what, like, everyone is different and everyone has a different journey. And that's what makes life exciting. That's like, because we're all different, because we all have a different walk of life. That's what makes it exciting and crazy that we live on this earth. So
Yeah. Yeah. So what are some of the misconceptions that people have with what you do and how you help them? What do you think that people do you think there's misconceptions?
Yeah, like, I think there's a lot of people that think that coaches are just like woo woo, like, oh yeah, like there's the universe is like spreading all this joy, and like there's no work, and like they don't really help you, and like, really the misconception is that everyone thinks that coaches are like airy fairy, and there's a lot of coaches that are out there that, you know, don't necessarily know what they're doing, and like, because it's under the coach, there's no real like overarching organization. But getting a certified coach, whether that's a certified life coach and health coach, which I am both, um, it's better to work with someone like that. But I mean, really, for me, like coaches are there to support you and coach you, because sometimes you just can't do it alone. And I have clients that, my first client, she started out, she was going through depression, and she had lost her horse farm, and she was in a really bad place. And so working through her with the program with her and going through everything, and really the biggest portion of my program is getting through the mindset. Your mindset controls everything. Your mind is what controls the body. It controls your emotions. Like, it's an incredible, like, I could talk all day about this, but I don't know how much longer we have. But anyways, side note, but just being able to change the way you think about certain things, and being able to, change just even the smallest things in your life, and then having them have big impacts, is incredible. So now, going through the program, she is now becoming a speaker in business, and she is starting her own company, and like doing all the things, which she had it all on her own. But sometimes you just need someone else to help you get that out of you, because let's face it, there's a lot of things that we know we're supposed to do, and we don't do them because we're too busy. We got something else going on in our life. We're scared. We have fear around what's going to, happen, what's going to be exposed of, like, things about us and all of this. But really, a coach is there to help you, like, expose that stuff and get that shit out of the way, and get into new stuff where it's like your new life, and you have this positivity. And I mean, yeah, nothing is ever sunshine and roses, but like, there is a chance to have a new opportunity, a new life, if you want to change. That's the big thing. If you don't want to change, don't get a coach.
It's not going to work.
No,
it's not going to work. Yeah. Yeah, because fear does hold us back so much. There's so much about fear. And I think we all still face it. Even though we know better, we don't necessarily do better when it comes to fear. And I just know that I have to be in one of those moods where I feel like, I mean, mine might be Wonder Woman, right? Because that was my thing growing up as a kid in the 70s.
Yeah.
Who's a powerful, kick-ass.
Good. Yeah.
With those cuffs that she had. And I have to be in one of those moods where I'm like, it's okay if people say no today. But there's other days when I'm like, I just can't take it today. I just can't take another no today. I couldn't put myself out there.
Yeah.
But knowing that it's incremental, that success doesn't happen overnight, that, nobody wakes up one day and goes, okay, now I'm going to do a keynote. That doesn't happen. Right? It's like the very first time I was speaking on not a stage, the first time I had to speak in front of 10 people, I was like the first time I was so nervous. And now it's easier. I still have the fears, but I know that it's not as bad. Like, the fears that I have going into it isn't as bad as when I do it. And then afterwards, I'm like, I'm so glad I did that. And it's sometimes the little steps, it's the little changes that we make that can turn out to be long changes bigger changes in the end.
Yeah, like, I can remember getting on stage during like one of the first events that I went to with Amy, and I was like sweating all over. I was like, I'm gonna puke. Like, what am I gonna do? And it was like, I got through it. Yeah, it wasn't the best, but I got through it. But I took the step. And then I kept on doing it, and I kept on doing it. And then I was like, okay, I actually love this. Like, I actually love interacting with people, and being on stage and making people laugh. And like, it's great. Like, again, like, little steps help you get to the bigger picture, get to the bigger adventure part of it.
Because I think some cases, in some cases, they're taking those little steps where, that once you achieve one of those little minor goals, when you look back on it, you go, well, if I can do this. For me, there's a lot of changes I had after I did skydiving. Because skydiving was a big thing. I wanted to do that so badly. And then after I jumped out of a plane, I'm like, well, what else can I, I could take on the world now. So what am I so afraid of if I can jump out of a plane or whatever it is that is your thing? And then the same thing happens. We almost all universally say this at funerals, right? It's like, we shouldn't wait until now until we reconnect with each other again. We always say those things. And that life sort of gets in the way sometimes. So
yes.
It's sometimes getting out of those ways of feeling like, oh, I can't do this because for the fear of what someone else is going to say. In fact, the people who love you are always going to have your back. I mean, thank God for Amy, because I mean, she's always making us, I know we're fangirling about Amy, right? But, like anybody can fall on their face and Amy's going to be like, oh, you're fine.
You're fine. You're great.
So I should.
But yeah, like it's.
Yeah, so it is, and it's just doing it, and then realizing afterwards, like the negative self-talk we have is far worse than anything anybody else could say.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. 100%. And like we are our own worst critic, and I know that's like such a cliche thing to say, but it is true. But all of these things, like this whole idea of the Tomb Raider, because I, love video games, but like this idea that, you go through life, like going through, levels where you're like getting all these trinkets and strengths and you're learning all these different things so that you can get to the next level, so that you can get through the things. And this goes for the really shit things that happen to you, like divorce or a really bad breakup, or, you lose someone close to you, or all of this, allows you to learn something new about yourself.
And so I find this too, and I might have said this in some of the other chats that I've had, is the couple times that I have done something that has been pretty dramatic insofar as going on national television or whatever, I realized afterwards I don't look as nervous as I'm feeling inside. I mean, when I was on The Social, it was an out-of-body experience. I don't remember any of it. So
oh my God, I would be fangirling all of it.
But afterwards I was like, oh, I can see I'm nervous, but more like other people can't necessarily tell.
Yes.
And that gave me the confidence to be able to do other things as well, because I realized, the way that people perceive me is not the way that I'm perceiving myself at the time. Those heart palpitations, the feeling like I'm just like, oh my God, I'm going to die right now. But yet nobody really saw that, because it was like where's that metaphor with the duck with the feet paddling underneath the water, right? So that's kind of the way I sort of felt, but it's not the way that other people had perceived it. So once I have taken some of those like small, like once I've set goals or done something, and then I look back and go, well, if I can do that, what else can I do? And I think that for me, that's helpful for me. I want to ask you too, Erin. So one of the things I noticed too, and I was actually having this conversation with a girlfriend this morning about ghosting. So I don't know how much you want to talk about ghosting, but it happens professionally. It happens personally. I just find, with the dating apps and things like that, do you find that people have just become disposable? Like, is that something else that's sort of like, it's dating and all that kind of stuff in the digital age is a little different, and are people having to go through those motions too?
Yeah, like the online dating world is crazy. And I know when I was working with Amy, I was on those dating apps, and just ghosting is one of those things that people take personally. And I remember, and you take it personally, because you're like, oh my God, what did I say? What did I do? But you really don't know. And again, like, it's the stepping into the other person's shoes thing, where it's like, you really don't know what that person's going through. Like, maybe they just decided, you know what, this isn't for me, or, has something going on, or like went on a trip, or obviously people, should have the decency to say, hey, this isn't working out for me. I hope you find what you're looking for. But for the most part, people are cowards, and they don't want to say how they feel because they don't want to hurt the other person. So they would rather, let that person sit on red rather than actually saying something. So if you come into that situation, it's just a matter of, okay, this has nothing to do with me. This has everything to do with the other person. And quite frankly, you did me a favor. The universe was doing me a favor. Get out of the way so I can I can find someone else. So if you just start, really for dating for me is like being able to look at it like an interview process, and like you're literally interviewing to start as a friend. So, going into it, having this idea, I'm excited to meet someone new. I'm excited to not look, I used to be like this, but like after the first date, you like imagine all this time, like the years ahead. Okay, there's my 3 babies, there's my wedding, all of this stuff. But you just kind of like forget all about that, because when that stuff gets in the way, it actually changes the dynamic of the relationship, and it puts pressure on the relationship. But if you go into it where you don't put pressure on yourself, you want to have a good time, and you see what happens, that's more of the way to go. Is like having a more like laid back, if I find someone, great. If I don't, that's okay.
Right.
Because being single is okay, because let's be serious, when you get into a relationship, you're gonna have to do a whole bunch of things that you don't want to do anyway. So enjoy the process.
Yeah, 100%. And I was going to go someplace with that, the ghosting thing, but yeah, when Maya Angelou, when people tell you who they are, believe them. And
yes,
as I said, like I've experienced this in professionally too, with people have asked for quotes, and I'll go back to them and follow up a few times, and then finally, you just finally kind of give up. But you're right, it has everything to do with them. Oh, this is where I was going to go, was the question, and I think that place of vulnerability of putting yourself out there. And that's it's interesting, because the same thing goes for job prospecting. I like from job prospecting to dating all the time, because even though you're going through that interview phase, it is a vulnerable place.
Yes.
And thank God for our friend Hans Ekman, who has helped to reframe and say things to me like, stop thinking of yourself as the contestant and realize you're the grand prize, which was, for me, was like mic drop. I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yes.
It's an amazing way to look at it, right? Instead of being the one that's in the more vulnerable place. Yes, it's vulnerable to put yourself out there, but realize that, that is not, it's okay. It's okay to realize that you're bringing value, and you're interviewing the person. It's not just about the power control of they have all the power and you're the submissive one, but you have the choice as well. So like
you're interviewing for your heart.
Oh, that's good.
Like that, for your heart. That is really what you're doing.
I love it.
And you're interviewing in the interview, you hope, is for someone that's gonna like stick around for a decent amount of time. So being able to choose wisely is essential. And you can do that by figuring out what you want before you get into that date. Because once you know what you want and the type of person you want, it's going to be a lot easier, because you're going to be like, okay. And I mean, I'm not saying like have a complete checklist of like his eyes need to be blue and his hair needs to be dark and like he needs to be fit and like, but really just for me, obviously looks and like sexual attraction is high on that list, but do they have the same values? Do they, have the same outlook on life? Because if you don't have the same outlook on life and the same, vision,
stuff, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, there's no point in, getting together, because you guys are going to veer off at some point. So, and just being able to laugh together, being able to feel, I think that the feeling that I look for is like a feeling of safety. And, that's something that I didn't have in other relationships, because it was just like this feeling of calm. And this feeling of calm, people like think about, oh, this relationship is boring, or like, why don't I have anxiety about all the things that are, going wrong, or like, why do I feel like crap like 80% of the time? And I think it's just this, all relationships, like you said, marriage, all of it, it's difficult, yes. But if you have the right partner that you're able to communicate, issues, like that wants to talk about stuff, that you're, feel comfortable doing that, you have fun together, all of the things, It's just knowing what you want instead of going in and, and being and staying strong to that. Because I know when you get into dating, you kind of like let your guard down. You're like, oh, that'll go away in a bit. And then you go on and you go on. And I'm like, okay, it's not going away. But as bad as it sounds, but like, don't settle.
Right.
Don't settle.
Yeah. But I think sometimes you're right. I think we do sort of question things. I mean, especially the longer that we live, the more, we've had our heart broken, the more like we're a little bit more accepted. Like, I'm not perfect. There, I can accept this, blah, blah, blah. But you kind of have to also be, I think recognizing some of the red flags as well. And then, and where do the boundaries lie? And I think that's tough for a lot of people. For me, I know that boundaries is still a big struggle for me. And so far as like, I don't realize someone has crossed a boundary until it's already happened. And then I go, well, how did I get here? How did I let this happen? And then I realize, oh wait, I let it happen because I didn't set the boundaries ahead of time, but I don't even know how to set those boundaries, and because I don't know what they happened until they've been crossed, if that makes sense.
So there's that's why you need to like figure out what you want in the first place. Because one of those things is boundaries. Is like, what are the boundaries that I have in a relationship? When you know what you want and don't want, and you're able to like staying strong in that. If you put up a boundary and that person is like, you know what, F this girl, like this is terrible, like and like fights it.
Right.
It's probably not the person for you, but someone who listens to your boundary and goes, oh yeah, you said that you didn't like this, or you said that you wanted to have like space after you come home from work, and stays and respects that boundary, then I would say that's a good person to consider.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, it's tough because, as I said, sometimes you don't know until you're in it, and then it's trying to navigate around that, which is not finite. Like there's, everybody's boundaries are going to be different.
Yeah,
and it's acceptable. And then it's sort of like, okay, I always used to say before my divorce is like, I'll pick my battles.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot that I was like, I'm not happy with this, but whatever. I'm not happy with this.
Because you don't want to lose them.
It wasn't about losing them so much as it was like, I don't have the strength to fight on this particular topic. Mm. But when it came to like, when the hammer came down, then it was just like, I mean, once I said to my ex-husband, I didn't think I was going to go here with it, but I said to my ex-husband, I only have to say I'm leaving once. And that's all it was like, there was a lot of threats on his end of like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And I just said, I'm only going to say it once. And that's what happened. I was like, okay, I'm done. And it's not as easy as that, obviously, but that's what happened was just enough buttons were pushed that, I was like, okay, and I'm out. But yeah. But that
and it's hard.
It is. Yeah.
It's hard to say no. It's hard to stand up for yourself in those situations because you don't know how the other person's going to react. And like, you don't have the strength to like really fight on this. And you, in the end, you want your relationship to work.
Sure.
Because obviously that is ideal. But I mean, just being knowing yourself and having this intuition about what you want and who you are and like what goes against your boundaries or your values is important, because then as much as like you can, have an idea of this and like read all the books, like you need to know inside, and like your body tells you.
Yeah.
Your body usually is the one saying, oh, okay, this is a little bit, too much, or like, okay, I'm feeling this. Like, I feel comfortable. Like, you'll start to begin to recognize signs, and you can do that by, I know meditation is I still struggle with it, but just like taking a couple of moments after a date and like being with yourself, get off of social media, nothing else distracting you, and just, even if you want to turn on some meditation music, but just sit with yourself. How did I feel during this date? Do I want to go on another date with this person? Mm-hmm. And just starting to sit back and like be quiet with yourself, even in other situations with like business, it's like, okay, how did I feel about that meeting? What do I want my next step to be? Mm-hmm. And just see how your body feels.
Yeah, because your intuition tells you so much. There's a really cool book. I don't know if you've read it, called The Gift of Fear.
I haven't.
Oh
Oh my
my
gosh.
gosh, it's a game changer. I saw Gavin DeBecker, Debeker, I think it is. And basically the whole book, The Gift of Fear, the fear that we feel in us. And it was really, he's a bodyguard to celebrities and things like that. And so it doesn't necessarily have to do with relationships, but more so of women when we put ourselves into these situations and we second guess putting ourselves into situations because our gut tells us maybe I shouldn't be, this doesn't feel right. And in hindsight, we look back and we go, I knew it. I
Yeah.
knew it, but I talked myself out of it. And the same thing goes for The Gift of Fear with children. There's a book that he wrote about the gift of fear with kids, and it's the same thing. I've done my best to raise my kid to like go with your gut instinct. If someone doesn't feel right to you, that's okay. Like if something just doesn't feel right, acknowledge it and honor it, right? Because we do talk ourselves out of a lot based on I want to be the nice person, I want to people please, I want to all that kind of stuff. So 100%
And
our intuition.
yeah. Crap, I just forgot what I was going to say. No, and I think actually going back to it, because one of the things that I really struggled with is anxiety. And I suffer from anxiety, I suffer from OCD. And one of the things that I was questioning my relationship during the 8 years that we were together. Year 5, probably should have ended it. Mm-hmm. And I kept going through it and getting all these bodily signals, thinking it was anxiety and like making myself sick, basically living a life outside of my body and getting to the point obviously where we get to divorce. But it's like, if I would have just listened to my body, things would have been different. But that's where I'm saying is like, take time to get to know yourself and get to know your body and how things feel and like believe your body. Because the difference between for me, between anxiety and your inner body knowing is that when you are silent with yourself, what are those thoughts coming through that you can completely non-judgmental to? That's the truth.
Yeah. I mean, here's another question, and I don't know if you can answer this, Erin, but I have a friend that's sort of going through some issues right now insofar as thinking about whether or not to divorce. Like they're sort of in a crossroads of, and we've been there. You were there, I was there, and I don't know if you have any answers for, do you stick it out? Do you decide to move on? Like, what are some of the things that people can sort of ask themselves, perhaps? Questions that like my friend can maybe sort of do a gut check on themselves as to whether, do I stick with the marriage and the kids, or do I move on? Do you have any insights, or is it just?
I think in terms of, again, I am not directing anyone to get divorced at all. This is not a definitive answer, but I think you can ask yourself, have I done everything to try and save this? Have I tried to have conversations with my partner, like full on, non-judgmental, open conversations about where we're both at, and really questioning. And maybe that's, getting a journal and literally writing down everything and how you're feeling and really doing a gut check there is like, okay, is this really what I want to be feeling like? And is this how I want it to go on in the future? And if you feel, and again, like if you feel in your gut, this is something that you want to stick with and it's worth going forward with, and you've done everything that you can do to make it work. And again, checking in with yourself, like, are they going against your boundaries? Are they treating you with respect? Are they, are you just not vibing? Like, are you, have you lost yourselves in this relationship? Can you rekindle that back? Creating, a day where you have a date. Either that's a communication date or it's a legit date where you go out on a date and you start dating each other again. But if you have exhausted all of the things and within your heart of hearts that you need to move on, I know that it's going to be very hard and, the process is difficult, but in the end, you are going to be so much happier, and your partner is going to be happier, and your kids are going to be happier when you're happier. Because I think it's a moment of, you know, they say this on the airplane, but you put your like oxygen mask on first before anyone else's. Because if you're not happy, like, your kids are not going to be happy. You know, life is, you're going to be living half a life. And why would you want to do that? If you feel like you're doing that, then I think that, you know, you shouldn't settle in your marriage or relationship, because being happy and, you know, finding the things that you do find joy in, that can happen outside of that. And you can still have a wonderful relationship with your partner if you want. But sometimes, like, we have to like normalize that sometimes all relationships just don't last. Sometimes, like, they were for a reason, a season, and a time, and, you know, you came to learn something, and then you move on.
Yeah, I have seen some marriages that circle back, like after they go through like this period where I think, and mostly it's the women that I know that like they'll do something, they'll go back to school, or they do something to empower themselves, and then maybe after they've gone through that process, they realize, actually, I kind of like this person. Like the thing that comes in my head, which kind of sounds stupid, is the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know. I think that they sort of almost re-acclimatize, and maybe as I'm saying this out loud too, Erin, is maybe when they found themselves through education, through empowering themselves, they realized that actually the problem wasn't necessarily with the relationship, it was me not feeling powerful in my own life. I don't know if that's the answer.
That is 100% it. I think that really relationships come down to you. So who you're being in that relationship, how you're being in that relationship, you know, making sure that you are staying true to yourself, but also contributing to the relationship. Because again, like, if you're not, you know, taking care of yourself, doing self-care, you know, doing things that keep up your love for yourself and your authenticity, you know, it adds to the relationship. And that, again, like, you come into the question of like, where are you both going? Like, if you're both not on the same path, then what's the point? So, you know, being able to, and because there is this whole idea that you need to get married, you need to have 2 kids, you need to do all of these things, that you lose sight of who you are, because this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So I think that it makes sense that women are going, or whoever is going back out into the world trying to find themselves, and then come back and be like, oh yeah, you know, that was actually really great. Or, you know, I needed to go find myself and rediscover who that is, to come back and actually love stronger and love bigger. You know, whether or not that relationship works out, but there's no bad thing in learning more about yourself, because really it's just going to allow you to have a better life, and you only have one. You only have one life.
Yeah. And I've read a lot from, have you read Esther Perel stuff?
I have heard a couple of her podcasts. Obviously, I haven't heard a lot. I know I should probably
I love her because one of the things that she said, there's a whole bunch of different things, and we can go down this, and we're kind of have to wrap up because there's like so many things that we can say about this, is that often our relationships go through different, even if you're married to the same person for your entire life, you go through different variations of that marriage. And so you like, I think what she say something like, used to be monogamy was having, like, being with the same person for your entire life, and now it's monogamy is one person at a time. But you can have that person for like, and have different iterations of your marriage. The pre-kids, the during the kids, the empty nesters are all different marriages, all unto themselves as well. And so there's different ways to find yourself within each stage.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of it, is that, you know, yes, you can have all these values and like going in the same direction, but no one stays the same. Everyone, like, every minute you're different. So being able to be with someone who's open to growing and exploring life with you, and, you know, being able to support you when you're feeling down and you're going through a tough spot, and vice versa. And just having the knowing that your partner is not going to be the same from the day you meet.
Mm-hmm.
because that's where marriage takes work.
Yeah.
Because you're, constantly having to wake up to choose this person.
Mm-hmm.
And, being able to, share this life with this person. But again, like, it's really about, two individuals coming together that are constantly evolving and changing. And if they're willing to, put in the effort to continue to explore each other and the world, who knows where that will take them.
Yeah. The most successful relationship I've ever seen is when, and I haven't seen it very often, but the most successful relationship I've ever seen is when they really like each other. Like they genuinely, I have a couple of cousins and they genuinely really like each other. They've gone through the same, obstacles that everybody else has gone through in marriages and things like that. But whenever I see them, they just sort of like, they pick each other out of it's so cute because they pick each other out of the crowd and they somehow make them their way back to each other. And they really, even after been married for 20 years, really genuinely, I can see it in their faces. They really enjoy each other's company. So I think that would be the magic.
And like you said, like you're continually finding your way back to each other. I think that's beautiful. Like it's just you're going and having your individuality, not necessarily like going to be single and going crazy to Las Vegas, but allowing yourself to have that other part of you that can go with your friends and go on adventures by yourself, but yet and changing and evolving, and yet coming back to the relationship and be like, hey babe, this amazing thing happened, like listen to this, and like, or I had this big change, I need your support through this, or whatever it is. But yeah, coming back to, that's beautiful.
Yeah, that's a good metaphor. So speaking of metaphors and like that kind of stuff, do you have a mantra, a belief, a motivational phrase? I usually like to ask people that. Was there anything that
I'd say that it's your inner adventure awaits, and that was kind of the tagline that I started with when I first started this inner adventure myself. And just, you are the heroine or hero of your own life. No matter, what you're going through or where you're at in life, you can always start anew. You can always find happiness. You can always find joy. Because I think that's one of the biggest things that people, when my clients come to me, is that they've lost themselves and they've lost joy. So you can always you just have to be willing to change.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think gratitude, for sure helps a lot. Finding
joy
every day, finding little.
There's always something.
Yeah, there's always something. Whether you wake up and you're like, I'm breathing today.
Yeah,
it's a good day.
I woke up, I got out of bed, cool, made some coffee.
Sometimes those little things that we're grateful for, because it really does make the mind shift. It's your point. Like sometimes people can spiral up and sometimes people can spiral down. So find different ways to get yourself to spiral up and find the
spiral up. Hashtag spiral up.
Awesome. So, Miss Erin, so how can people reach you if they want to reach out to you to find out more about how they can get, coaching and all that other fun stuff with you?
Yeah, so you can reach me at info@thejoytribeco.ca. Website is www.thejoytribeco.ca. And you can find me on Facebook or Insta, and I post a lot of tips and inspirational stuff. I also, that's at The Joy Tribe Co. And then when you get onto my website, you can join my mailing list where I write a blog or do a video every week. So lots of good stuff. I also have a YouTube channel, lots of things going on, but there's always a way to find me.
Yay. And Amy mentioned surrounding yourself with awesome friends.
Yes.
Thank God for my friend Amy this year. She's helped me like this COVID stuff. And, I'm just so grateful for her little campers. Like she doesn't she call them campers for all her speakers and things like that. So definitely
we're part of the Amy tribe.
Amy fan club.
Amy fan club.
For sure.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Amy, for posting that. Oh gosh.
The next time we should have a three-way chat.
Oh my God, I would love it.
That'd be so much fun.
We could do it with red wine.
I think that would be fantastic.
Like an after 9
Yes,
like
it could
event.
Could be day drinking. Could be the day.
Or it could be true.
Yay! Oh, and Steve Jones is on here too. Friends and Games helps for sure. Those guys have just kept my sanity because they keep me laughing. So definitely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Miss Erin. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. And if
Oh my gosh.
join and share their key insights with us. There's a lot of different ways. This is on YouTube and LinkedIn, and I share this also on my blog as well. So please let Erin and myself know any key takeaways, any of the best parts that you liked about this. Please do let us know. So thanks again.
Yeah,
Erin.
thank you so much, Leslie. This was amazing.
Yeah, it's so much fun, so insightful. I could talk about this stuff all day.
No kidding. I have
talk about anything all day, but I do love talking about this stuff. So your insights have been really helpful. I'm sure a lot of people really have found it valuable to get your perspective on all this. So
yeah, well, thank you for allowing me to grace your stage.
Awesome. All right, sweetie, we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye guys.